Saturday night was a disaster for the Cardinals. We'll break it down. You're locked on Louisville.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Welcome into the Locked On Louisville podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in the world. As you all know, this is my 6th year covering U of L, 4th year hosting this show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today to get started. Today's show is going to be all about breaking down the 29-26 loss against California on Saturday. This was a tough day at the office for the defense. The offense had multiple opportunities in the fourth quarter and couldn't get over the hump. We'll discuss whether or not it's time for a quarterback change for the Cardinals. But first, we're going to open up with the overall thoughts on this loss. What happens as a result? Obviously, the ACC championship game and college football playoff hopes take a hit, but we'll talk about this in its entirety. I mean, the Cardinals were anywhere from a 19.5 to 20-point favorite in this game, so losing it is unacceptable. I'll just say it. It's unacceptable. Now, again, you're reminded that these games aren't played on paper. They're played on grass. And I understand it's not easy to win football games, especially in conference play. But when you're projected to win by that much, you're expected to win. Now, look, I think it's a pet peeve of mine when other fan bases don't give teams credit. Like, I'm going to give California credit. I thought that they played a really good game. They didn't turn the football over. Jaron-Keawe Sagapolutele was fantastic. David DeJesus had, I want to say, 56 catches in this game. And California got the job done. They made plays at the end of the game. They made plays in overtime, and it won them the game. They went on the road against a top 20 team in the country, and they pulled off the upset. So huge amounts of credit go to Cal. Obviously, the Calgorithm was in full effect on Saturday night. But let's look at this from Louisville's standpoint. This yearly trend extends to 2025. 2023, you lose a game to Pittsburgh. 2024, you lose a game to Stanford. And 2025, you lose a game to California. What all three of those losses have in common is that they are unacceptable losses. Like, you should not be losing to teams that you were favored to beat by that much. I'm sorry, and no disrespect to any of the teams that defeated the Cardinals in any of those games, but when you are the better team on paper, you need to come out there and win that game, especially when you have everything to play for. And this is another aspect of this, that when you focus on the trap game, when the trap game has come, I understand this year's a little bit different. It didn't happen right after a big win, but still, you have everything to play for, and losing a game that you're favored to win by almost 3 touchdowns, it's unacceptable. I'm just going to say it. No, I'm not going to sit here and say that Jeff Brohm needs to be fired. Please don't take that as what I'm saying. Doesn't have to be that extreme. But we do have to have a conversation about why this keeps happening. The good news is they're beating teams that maybe they shouldn't every year. The bad news is that they're losing to teams that they absolutely shouldn't. So it's becoming a yearly trend. This is a disastrous loss for the Cardinals. You had every opportunity to win this game in the fourth quarter. You didn't do it. And here's the thing. You could almost see this coming. All season long, we've talked about how good this team has been in the fourth quarter. And the truth is that they had been, right? I mean, I'm not saying that we get to rewrite history. We talked about how good of a second half team this was. There's truth to that as well. But outside of the Miami game, I don't know that there's one game that I point back to and say, you know what, Louisville was really consistent in this game. Like they weren't convincing in really any of their wins up until this point against Power Four competition. Now there is something to be said about going out and winning those games. Like you were 7-1, so the record's great, but how you got there, this almost was foreshadowed. For example, let's go back to post Miami win. You play Boston College and you play down to your competition. They start out hot. You end up, steadying the ship. You take 11-point lead into halftime, and then you allow Boston College to stick around in the game. Virginia Tech, you start out hot. Virginia Tech goes up by 9 at halftime, and you end up winning that game, but still inconsistent. And now Saturday, you start out hot. You force California. Well, they missed a field goal. You scored a touchdown. Then you forced them to punt. You weren't able to get anything else going. And then California took a lead into halftime. And then you weren't able to get the lead back. So I say that you could almost see this coming because the Cardinals were playing with their food, so to speak. Is that when you give teams hope, eventually it's going to come back and haunt you. I believe that. Like having to resort to all of these second half comebacks, that's the fear that I had. If you dug yourself into a hole in the first half, maybe you're not able to complete a second half comeback in one certain game. Now, you had every opportunity to do so, but how different is it if you go into half leading? Who knows? But here's the thing. This loss pretty much takes you out of the ACC championship game and college football playoff contention. That's the thing that we had talked about every single week after the Miami win is that, hey, look, you win out, at least in ACC play, you're probably going to get to Charlotte. You win out in the regular season, you're probably going to get into the college football playoffs. Remember how we talked about how the Cardinals were too low in the CFP rankings? Well, now it's like maybe they were onto something because the top 15 teams should not be losing to California. No disrespect to the Bears. You were expected to win that game by almost 21 points. Now, it's not a foregone conclusion that you're automatically missing out on the ACC championship game, but it's not likely. You have, 5 teams with 4 losses. You got Georgia Tech, Virginia, Pittsburgh, SMU, and Duke. Now, there is a world where if you beat Clemson and Duke, which after the California game, you kind of wonder, well, why are we talking about ACC championship game hopes when we can't even beat Cal? I respect it. We're just talking about this as a formality because we've talked about this every week since the Miami game. If you somehow went out, you beat Clemson and SMU, and there's pandemonium up top because Pittsburgh and Georgia Tech, one of those teams is going to have to get a loss. Duke and Virginia play each other. One of those teams is going to have to get a loss. There are opportunities to where you need 4 of the 5 top teams to pick up a second loss. Now, here's the thing, though. Even if you went out, there's going to be this messy tiebreaker that could feature like 5 teams. Who's going to be up there? Who's going to get the nod? Like, you're going to have to get you're going to have to get all the luck in this situation. I'm not sure who would even win that, but I also think that your pathway to the college football playoffs is you have to somehow get to Charlotte and you have to win that game. A 10-2 at-large team in the ACC that doesn't make it to their conference championship game is not getting into the playoffs. I need you all to understand that. You all saw it. Now, unfortunately, Virginia and Louisville both lost, but they were 14-15 with 1 loss, sitting on the outside looking in favor of multiple SEC teams with multiple losses. So and then not to mention Notre Dame. But again, maybe it's not time to focus on the ACC championship game or the college football playoffs. Let's just focus on Clemson, because if you're losing to Cal and Louisville hasn't really been all that convincing over the past couple of weeks since the Miami game, maybe you got to do some soul searching. And I think to begin to do that, we have to finally start the conversation on this show. And you know which conversation that is. But we'll have that convo when we come back. You're tuned to the Locked On Louisville, covering your team every day. Card Nation, this time I want to tell you about our friends over at Wayfair. The holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time to get your home ready, whether you need more seating for your guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting. Wayfair has a Black Friday sale coming up, and it's here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long with up to 70% off of everything from sofas to spatulas. I couldn't believe how fast everything shipped last year when I used Wayfair to get some new furniture for my home. When you browse through their site, it's easy to find the pieces that actually fit your style. So don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com now to shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com. The sale ends on December 7th. Card Nation, thank you all so much for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Also, thank you for playing a part in making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. It is a huge honor, and we couldn't do it without all of the everydayers out there. But let's continue the conversation. And full transparency, these are the episodes that I hate the most. Of course, when you lose, but it's the one where there might be further implications. These are the ones that I just despise to record, but we've got to, because we got to keep it real. We got to hype up when things go good, but we got to criticize when things don't go so good. Now, here's the thing. There's a fine line between criticism being justifiable and unfair, and you have to toe that line sometimes. I don't really like to criticize players all that much, but let me start out this way. You all know I was a huge Miller Moss advocate. When the Cardinals were linked to him about almost a year ago, a little under a year ago, when the Cardinals were linked to him, when he visited U of L, when he committed to U of L, all throughout the spring, I hyped up Miller Moss over and over and over again. I gave him the benefit of the doubt when things weren't going so well early on in the season. Now, it hasn't been all his fault. The offensive line play hasn't been the greatest. Early on in the season, you didn't really have a running game because of the O-line play and because of injuries. But since, things have turned around. Your offensive line play has gotten better, and you've been able to run the football. Yes, Isaac Brown was hurt and did not play against California, and having one of the best players at his position in the sport would help, certainly, but running backs weren't the problem on Saturday night. I will admit that I was wrong. I believed, even with Moss's struggles and why he got benched at USC, I thought that with Jeff Brohm's offense, with the skill position guys that he would be playing with, and I ultimately thought that the offensive line play was going to be better, but I thought that the system was going to be able to elevate Moss's strengths like it had done for Jack Plummer and Tyler Shough the past 2 years. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, things just haven't worked out. Something that frustrates me the most is that Moss has been making consistent mistakes. He's making levels of mistakes that veterans like him just can't be making. telegraphing passes into double coverage, trying to force plays. The one where he's falling down against Virginia through the pick six. There's been plays. You know what I'm talking about. He's made some poor decisions that have hurt the Cardinals tremendously. Now, look, I understand that it hasn't all been bad. And you have to wonder, well, Louisville was 7-1 before this game. Kind of got to go beneath the surface. Are you 7-1 because of good quarterback play? Or are you 7-1 in spite of quarterback play? The team effort, the offense has played its role in this, but the main reason why the Cardinals are 7-1, A, is because the defense has bailed them out more often than not, and B, the rushing attack has gotten better. I believe this. Yes, the passing attack has help this team out. I'm not suggesting that. I don't want to sit here and just criticize Moss over and over and over, but we got to have a conversation. Miller didn't play good against California on Saturday night. He was 20 for 38, 203 yards, and 1 interception. He did have a tush-push rushing touchdown, but he made some throws. He had an interception where he threw the ball into double coverage in the second half. I think California got a field goal off of that, if I'm not mistaken. It just wasn't a good performance from him. And I think that quarterback play honestly just held this team back on Saturday, and it's been something that's been questionable truthfully all season long, but especially in the past 3 games. Now, you give Miller credit because he's dealt with an offensive line that struggled early on. He didn't really have a running game, so I don't want to sit here and just tee off on Miller because he's had some good moments. And it's not all been bad. But when you're a team with aspirations like the Louisville Cardinals, you need your quarterback play to be better. Because you see that, well, let's look at the season stats for Miller. Miller has completed, let's see. In November, he's completed 59% of his passes, and conference play 63%. Overall, 63.8% completion percentage. That is the lowest of his career since he played, I think, 2 games in 2021. 2,132 yards, 11 touchdowns passing, 7 interceptions. He does have 7 rushing touchdowns, which has been it's been nice to see. Of course, he's combined for almost 20 touchdowns, but it's the turnovers. It's the accuracy issues of just point blank missing guys. It's the locking on to one read. It's getting rattled with any amount of pressure and just making these mistakes that you can't. To the point where it's a long way to come to this conversation, I think it might be time to, at the very least, seriously consider going to either Deuce Adams and Brady Allen and saying, hey, what you got? What you got? Show me what you got. And if your response to this is, well, it could be worse with Deuce or Brady, and I respect that, but my rebuttal, my humble rebuttal would be, well, quarterback play isn't that great right now, and it's holding this team back, holding this offense back. Why not give things a shot? Because at the moment, you're on the outside looking in for the ACC championship game and the college football playoffs. You kind of have to see what you got for the future. You need to see what you got with Deuce Adams. And if the rebuttal to my rebuttal is, well, these guys aren't ready, well, therein lies another problem that we have to have a conversation about, because here we are in year 3 under Jeff Brohm, and you're telling me that there's not a backup quarterback that you can put into this game and have any amount of success. I understand when things are going bad on offense, the fans' favorite player is the backup quarterback. And I have kind of pushed that conversation off to the side. I've tried to be as fair as I can with Miller Moss. You know that. You know that I have done my best to give him every benefit of the doubt. But I came away from that game on Saturday thinking that it might be time to look elsewhere. and try something different, because what's going on right now is trending in the wrong direction. Defenses are daring Louisville to throw the football deep. They're not doing so. And when they do, ill-advised throws. They're pinning their ears back and trying to get after the quarterback, because they understand that when they get pressure in the backfield, Miller Moss is struggling to make decisions on the go. He's struggling to make throws on the run, and he's getting rattled. And I understand it hasn't all been bad. I get it. But with the way things are trending, it just might be time to at least seriously consider making a change at quarterback. But we're not done yet with the California review, not preview. I wish we were talking about preview and we could just replay this game, but California review, because this was the tough day at the office for the Cardinals defense, and in my opinion, the worst performance of the season for Ron English's unit. We'll break it down when we come back. You're tuned into Locked On Louisville, covering your team every day. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a larger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Card Nation, we probably are going to have multiple Monday episodes. Just a heads up, we do have the Kentucky-Louisville basketball game tomorrow. Working on getting a special guest on for tomorrow's preview. We'll see if that ends up happening. But yeah, this is a game where there's a lot of stuff to discuss pregame, right? So we'll have multiple episodes breaking that down. But to wrap up today's show, we're going to continue to painfully talk about this disastrous 29-26 loss against California at home. And again, I reiterate that California's offense and their game planning and their play calling deserve flowers. Jaron-Keawe Sagapolutele threw for 323 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kendrick Raphael had 83 yards on the ground and a touchdown, and Jacob DeJesus had seemingly 400 catches. I thought the play calling was unique. They pulled out all the stops. They used a ton of misdirection, and they were successful. Louisville did not have any answers for the Golden Bears all night. They forced a couple punts. They gave their offense a chance in the fourth quarter, but they weren't able to move the football when things counted in the fourth quarter. I think that's the first thing, is that the lack of adjustments was alarming. And it was unusual for Ron English in 2025, because in this season, we've seen second half adjustments be made pretty much every game. California, even though they only scored 6 points in the second half, they were still moving the football. JKS, not JVS, JKS was throwing the football all over the field. And Louisville had no answers. Now, part of that is because they didn't really get much of a pass rush. They had 3 sacks. One was from Wesley Bailey, one was from AJ Green, one was from Jordan Garrod. But outside of that, not really forcing JKS to speed up his internal clock. That puts the secondary in a tough situation, and the secondary struggled to cover guys. And my thing is that it seemed like they were running some of the same plays over and over and over again. So, hey, look, we're going to tell you what we're going to do. It's up to you to stop it. Louisville just didn't have an answer. Jacob DeJesus was targeted 20 times, at least. And he had 16 catches. I mean, shades of what T.Y. Hilton did to the Cardinals almost 2 decades ago. Remember how Cardinal fans still joke about that? Now they're going to joke about this. They kept throwing it on the wheel routes, the out routes. Like, what more do you need to see before you make an adjustment? Because there was none. The secondary struggled, and that's putting it lightly. Now, the defense still gave you an opportunity in the fourth quarter. California scored 0 points in the fourth quarter. You had every opportunity to go down that field and score, and you didn't. I saw Jeff Brohm chewing out Ron English, and part of me's kind of like, you know what? I get it. But I think it's kind of ironic because the defense has bailed out the offense time and time again this season. James Madison. Pittsburgh to an extent. Virginia to an extent. Miami. Virginia Tech. Boston College. And they tried to again in this game. Now, they weren't perfect whatsoever. I get that. They gave up over 400 yards of total offense. Louisville got outgained in this game by almost 80 yards. California was the better team on Saturday night. But I kind of feel some type of way. I understand you got to hold your coaches accountable. And Ron English didn't have a great coaching performance on Saturday. But I kind of sit there and I'm like, man, I think that's kind of almost unfair because the defense has been the main reason why this team was 7-1 in the first place. It's been the offense that has struggled. I think everyone's to blame. Special teams. Cooper Rambier, hats off. He did everything he could to keep the Cardinals in this game. He was 4 of 4 on field goals, hit a 49-yard field goal in the fourth quarter to tie the game. He was money. Other than that, I just don't know. It's every year that there's a trap game. Is it really a trap game if you expect it? Like, if you expect a trap game, is it truly a trap game because you know that it's a trap game? How does that work? That's my question. Excuse me, sorry. I'm just frustrated, like you all. This was deja vu from the past 2 years, and it makes it even worse is that you were at home. You weren't at home the past 2 years. You were at home with everything to play for. 3 conference games to go, and you lose to a team that you were favored to beat by almost 21 points. It's unacceptable. It doesn't mean that if Louisville were to still have success at the end of this year, that it's not a good season. It's bittersweet. Sorry, I can't see the forest for the trees. Like, if Louisville goes 9-3 and 10-2, I perhaps would still say it's a successful season considering the program's expectations. But it's hard not to look back thinking, well, what happens if you just beat a team that you're supposed to beat by 21? And maybe it's a different conversation we're having, but we're having to have this conversation. And we'll talk about the Clemson game when it rolls around, but we got some basketball talk that we got to get into over the next couple of days. You're tuned into Locked On Louisville. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Everyone have a great start to your week. We'll see you back here coming up soon.